Level podcast. Your Masonic podcast. Join the hosts Billy McIntyre and Sam Earl Sedgey as they delve into the world of Freemasonry.
Welcome once again to an action-packed adventure with Billy and Sam and a crazy little thing we call On the Level podcast. As we begin this epic adventure, we find our two fearless podcasters on opposite sides of the planet, with Sam indulging himself in the Orient and Billy desperately trying to hold down the fort in the Western world. Sam, what is your opening words?
Brother Billy, brethren, sisters, listeners of the world, hello. I'm very excited to be back. What an opening, what an epic opening. And yes, I am in the mysterious Orient, sourcing and finding mysterious texts and getting ever deeper into the lost and found relics of our order, brother. In the deepest minds of the East, in the deepest tombs. But enough of that. That is for another show. But no, yeah, I'm good. You know, so guys, if you hear a bit of background noise when I'm talking, I'm in my studio here. I've got my aircon here. I've got aircon all around the house, but the studio is kind of like separate from the place in the house I live, and the aircon wasn't fitted. I didn't fit aircon in this place, and so I've got my aircon system in here. So there's a bit of background noise. That's the fan. I've got my ice maker machine here, which is a freaking awesome ice maker machine. I don't know why it's not available around the world, because this is like the serious business UV. You pour some water in, it goes through UV light, kills all the bacteria. Then it just punches out ice like restaurant ice, but you're using, top of the class grade water. So I'm getting that. And I got my mini fridge. I got my studio, my recording studio, where we do this podcast. And I've got my music. My music studio is in the same area here. So I'm doing good. It's a little bit hot. It's 28 degrees
and all
here.
Joking aside,
yeah.
And all joking aside, Sam is in China.
Yes.
This isn't a joke.
Yes, I am.
He is in China.
I have been here for quite some time. It's been a fantastic experience. It's been something where I've had a lot of observing about how fundamentally, the things are here, and it's just been an amazing experience looking into things and how people live. And if you're an expat, you live very well here, and we're just getting on and grinding, and you're looking forward to getting back at some point. But priorities here come first, and I got to get stuff sorted here. And I'm looking forward to engaging back and doing some historical podcasts on the Knights Templar and many other things with Billy. And we've got a lot of things to unpack in the future. There's a lot of episodes, and before this episode, this is epic Wizards of the Sun episode that you'll probably be have listened to. So Billy, this is a special episode, isn't it?
Oh, we have a lot of things to unpack. We have some Western things coming up. We have a lot of things, and we're still going. Yeah, not only the Knights Templar, but we also going to get back to our things we were doing on the making of America with the founding fathers. We have several episodes coming up as well. But this is something a little special. We have a little bit of housekeeping stuff that we needed to take care of here. But before that, there's something that I'd be remiss if I didn't cover. So I find this kind of important, and I think the brothers will too, and also our friends that listen to our podcast. So I was approached by a brother who sat down to me very seriously and took me by the hand and by the shoulder and says, I need to know, where's that Scottish guy that follows you around that comes from the podcast? Now, anyone that knows, Sam is not only a very proud son of England, he sips tea and eats crumpets with the best of them. But Sam, I think it's time for you to explain yourself. Tell us your lineage.
Apparently, laddie, I got a bit of Scottish in me. I got a bit of Scottish blood in me. I'm very proud of being called a Scotsman. I have a lot of traits in terms of being a Scotsman, especially economic traits of being a bit tight on when it comes to being a bit frugal. And also being a bit of a hard edge sometimes, when it comes. I love my ritual, and I love to put on my suit and my white gloves and my black tie or my Knights Templar tie and come in and with all the regalia and represent Freemasonry as best as I can. And really, that part is honouring our ancestors, honouring our brethren who've done so much in the world, for their communities, for their families, for their brethren's families. So much that has gone unspoken, so much that's been unsaid, but so much good has been done in the world. And it's always nice to be, it brings a warm smile to my heart that, you know, that I'm still not forgotten. But I'm called a Scots, but I'm actually Englishman. But I'm sure if I did a DNA test, there'll be a lot of pointers to Scotland, and maybe if they can do an ancient bloodline lineage, probably part of my ancestry was from those crazy Celts that they're all painted up and charging the Romans at Hadrian Wall, and they have a bit of a temper, like sometimes I may do, and they're very stubborn. They're stubborn, I'm very stubborn, and they do like their freedom, and I do like my freedom as well. And I hope everywhere, all of my brethren in Illinois are doing well and are being merry. And as I've said before, the world needs Freemasonry even more. The world lacks an immense amount of leadership. And that's where we should step in and lead in our communities. And that's by faith, hope, and charity, and being the best versions of ourselves as human beings, and being there for our fellow man, for our fellow brother, and for our community, and leading by example. I said to one person, Billy, that I met here in what I call Cathay, Grand Cathay, China, basically. Mm-hmm. So if I say Cathay, I mean China, Grand Cathay. And it was a fine gentleman. He's doing a PhD, being a doctor, and he said to me, "Why are you so?" It was like in a good, decent accent. He was very well spoken in English. This Chinese gentleman. He says, "You're very polite. The way you present yourself, and I haven't heard one single curse come out of your mouth, and you're very gracious and all that kind of stuff." And I said, well, listen, I have to honor my ancestors. I have to honor who I represent. He saw my Knights Templar ring, and I have a Knights Templar pendant as well. And he saw that, and I said, and everywhere I go, I'm representing my community, I'm representing my fraternity, I'm representing my family, I'm representing my father, my father's fathers, and my brethren. And anyhow, I got a message from him on Sunday morning, and he said, "Hey, my grandfather just passed away, and it was very difficult. But I thought about what you said, and it touched me greatly, and the fact that we're here to represent our forefathers." And he was talking about his grandfather. He just passed away, and I said to him, and I replied back, I said, "Best thing you can do is honor his memory and honor him as a man and as your grandfather, and be the best version of yourself." And he really appreciated those comments, and then that's the best. And then I wished him, and I gave him my deepest condolences. But from a fellow man from across the world who isn't a Freemason, who thinks hard and thinks deep about principles and ethics, he was really touched by what I said, and my point being, the point is that that's what we're here to do. We're here to honor our fathers and our fathers' fathers, and all the way we've basically have come from somewhere, and those people that we've come from, our family lineage, they struggled more than we ever have. This is the best time that we have. This is the best era in human history that I'm aware of as a historian. And we take a lot of things for granted. So when I say to myself, I've been observing a lot in China and seeing how I've been in the Grand Cafe when it was in early 2000s, in the 2010s as well. All the way through, and I've seen this country that was impoverished rise beyond its means and do really well, and seeing people now, families and kids, on the abundance of children, playing and getting educated, and an abundance of better living standards, and all we want around the world is everyone to do well and have abundance. But we have to appreciate that abundance.
Yes.
And a lot of times, life hits you down. Life throws a lot of punches at you, but you always just got to look around and say, I've got this, and I've got this, and then it may not be more than the other person, but you know what's really important, Billy? Sometimes it's important as a Christian Freemason, as a Knights Templar, member of the York Rite. It's the Ten Commandments, and there's one commandment that says, "Do not covet thy neighbor's goods and how well he lives. Do not be jealous, basically, of what your neighbor
Yes.
has." And what that means is focus on yourself. The life hands you with different types of cards, and it's about how well you can do as being a better version of yourself, and appreciating all the things you get, all the challenges the Grand Architect, or what we call God, gives us, basically. So I know I've gone on a long-winded way in answering your question,
Oh,
but
very true, though.
I've had a lot of time to think. and so there you go, guys. And I hope you take a modicum of wisdom from that. And a lot of wisdom is through trials and errors and mistakes and grief and loss and sadness and respect. And the more we honor our ancestors in terms of our fathers' fathers and our fathers and our family members, the more we appreciate the trials and tribulations they went through, and the more you can pass it down to your kids to have that deep in understanding. This is not a unique trait. The Romans were great at this, in respecting their ancestors. And we as Masons, and the reason what I'm talking about is, we as Masons always look up to our brethren in the Celestial Lodge. And we have a long lineage of great Freemasons in our history who have done a lot. And there are many who have not been written about, who have done a lot for their communities. And those you haven't heard about is because Freemasonry isn't a place of glory, glory hunting and title seeking. It's about, doing the best you can and, smiling about it and being happy that you've made an impact without even thinking about getting any credit for it. It's about service. It's about duty. It's about honor. And that's what makes me a proud Freemason.
Absolutely. Near the credit that we need to give it is honor, because honor is something that you can't just, once you lose it, it's very hard to ever get back.
I mean, I tell you, what was really exciting is when you're now the youngest, in terms of you being the past most illustrious Grand Master of the Cryptic Masons of the state of Illinois. It was such a great year, and you led so well, and there was so much fun, and seeing all the smiles and seeing the growth and just having that joy, and seeing the rebuilding of what I call the rebuilding of the Second Temple of King Solomon, and it's a joy to work with you, Billy, and do this podcast and talk about Freemasonry and share our enthusiasms and bring the other great people on the podcast who have the same enthusiasm and love for this order. And it's great to interact with people around the world who sometimes get very, very skewed views on Freemasonry. I sometimes, check some of these podcasts because some of these guys are very, very intelligent on economics and on world history, and have some really, really interesting insights. So then they come to Freemasonry, and it's just this garbage that they spew, because the lack of understanding, the lack of knowing, getting disgruntled and warped views about our order, and not really understanding, what Freemasonry is about. And I'm very honoured and privileged to do this with you, Billy, and just speak truth, and share the brotherhood, share the fraternity, share the faith, hope, and charity that all Freemasons around the world are trying to spread, and spread the light, basically.
Well, and it's also been important to me that we stay positive on this, because it's so easy to find negativity. You can find negative in Freemasonry, and everyone that's been in Freemasonry, we all know about the grumpy old past master. It's a joke everywhere, because it's so easy to be grumpy. It's easy to say, well, that's not the way we did it when I was a master, and that's a joke. If you've been a master, And unfortunately, the joke is that nobody's ever as good as you were, and that's just a joke and you
Well,
understand
here's
once
the
you're
thing. Here's the
mastered.
thing. When you go in as a worshipful master, which we both have been power now,
Mm-hmm.
technically both past masters as well. It's about building. It's about building that blood, but
Mm-hmm.
building it with your community, building with your brethren, and it's trusting your brethren, working together, and
Yeah,
making sure you're working with brethren who are like-minded. You're in the lodge with the right people who are like-minded. Look,
it's
we
true.
live in a world where there is a diverse world, and even if it comes to localities, there's a diverse way of thinking and how to do things. Everyone is kind of going for the same kind of goal, but there are
Sure.
loads of different routes to get there. And so it's important to guard that west gate, I call it, and get people who work in synergy with each other and can produce efforts of labor as opposed to becoming roadblocks and getting into disagreements and being negative and all that kind of stuff that you're talking about. So there's a lot of
Well,
thought behind it, and there's a lot of work that we do, and a lot of building. And I'm very proud to be a member
yeah.
of Frank and Nicole Lodge number 1170. I'm very proud to. The other lodge that I always look forward to going to is St. Paul's Lodge 500, which are this phenomenal group of brothers. And I love the festive boards that we do there every time I'm there, and the toasting that we do, which is a part of the bonding and the ritual that's very
Mm-hmm.
prevalent in the United Kingdom, and I hope to see more of that in our localities in Illinois.
I bet you miss seeing some of the bonding and stuff while you're over there because there's no masonry in China at all, is there?
Yeah, so masonry is banned in the
Right.
PRC, and but you know what's really interesting? It's seeing a lot of good men, a lot of good people, and as brothers who are in nations where Freemasonry is allowed to be practiced without fear or favor. Um, count yourself lucky. The guys here are missing out on a very special ancient fraternity of free agents accepted Masons, and it's more of a lack of understanding, I think, a lack of fear from all the propaganda that we've had against us through the centuries. Um, Actually, a lot of the what's this is what's really interesting. A lot of the thinkers here and a lot of the what I call brothers, because I see everyone. We're one human race, right? And I see a lot of the men here.
Mm-hmm.
They're all striving to be better versions of themselves, and even here there is this concept of being a better version of yourself, but it's not codified, and it's more Wild West, I guess. And I hope one day, and it has happened. Like right now, in China, there are Christian churches, which was never the case. Although they have to be mandated and given a license by the state, the fact that there are some and it's growing is fantastic. So that's a great concept, and it's just I think it's a matter of time. It's a matter of decades, and a matter of time and understanding. Because we are prevalent in other parts of Asia, very very prevalent, and but it's been banned since the inception of the PRC. And so I think with time, with healing, you have to understand historically here as well. See, I tried to look at all, but the great powers came in with, especially the British Empire, came in with like the Opium Wars and forced trade deals.
Oh yeah.
It was a century of humiliation. They call it in China. They call it the century of humiliation, because prior to that, China was in the forefront of a lot of things, tech industry, for thousands of years. And so and there are people who don't forget. There are people who do not forget their history, and
Mm-hmm.
it's constantly repeated for better or for worse. And but what people don't understand, if I can defend the British Empire, and there's something we'll go into at some point as well about empire, because we did an episode on empires. Is
Mm-hmm.
what's fascinating about the British Empire, before we get into the crux of what we're doing the show for, is it was the first corporation, or what I call the corporate empire. So it wasn't, in fact, it wasn't the, let's just say, the mandated British Navy or fleet that went around and did the colonization and did all the empiring. It was the corporations, most notably the East Indian Company, which was finally nationalized in the late 1800s. But a lot of that had to do with the East Indian Company, and it was it's seen from a legal aspect, from my understanding, we'll break it down even more, that having separate entities that represented Great Britain in many ways, it was still based on business and transactions. And when you start digging into the history, this was more about trade wars and trade deals and resources.
Yeah.
But the difference is when the Britain, in some cases, there is an ugly side of empire as well that we'll go into, but there was a place where railways was built, technology was, there were improvements made. Should there have been more? I think yes, but it wasn't. It was one of the most interesting empires which didn't collapse in a state that other empires did, and was winded down very, very slowly. But we'll talk more about that in other shows, and how Masonry and the effect Masonry had with empire as well. We did a show on that, and we showed you how influential our brethren in the Celestial Lodge were in Masonry, and in certain aspects of our history in the British Empire and in the American government, and in terms of business and industry as well, and where we're at right now. So there's a lot of things for us to unpack. But this is not what the show is about. The show is actually something that has been very close to our hearts, and it's been a personal drive of Billy's, and it's been very successful. And I think you want to touch base on an initiative that you did this year. Am I correct? That the Underlevel podcast did?
Yes. It's kind of crazy, but so way back, and this was something that was meant to be small, and it just keeps growing, and this is kind of maybe an end to something that was special, but it'll never end, supposedly. Maybe. So in the winter, and now we're in, well, at the time of the recording, we're in the middle of May. So this will probably be released before the end of May, I would say, this podcast. And I started in the winter time after Christmas. I thought maybe we'd do a food drive. And I started out with some of the local lodges was doing food drives around Christmas time. And this was after that, we started having a big storm. And I thought, well, possibly something like On the Level podcast would do possibly a food drive as well. And not so much in name of the podcast, but just, we needed something as a placeholder, and we did that. Well, I just kind of put the word out at a few degrees I was at, and that was that. And I didn't really advertise except like that. Well, through word of mouth and people spreading the word, not only through Masonry, but I guess through the community, people started showing up at my house with food, canned food. And I'm not exaggerating. I'll be putting pictures on the website, at the release of this podcast. To say I had a back end load of food of my pickup truck is not an exaggeration. So I'm still getting food at this time. And like I said, this is May, and people's just dropping off, a sack of food here, or, maybe 3 or 4 cans. And I said, there's like food pantries right there in your town, and you're driving sometimes 15 miles to hand me 3 or 4 cans of food. You could just drop it off. And they go, yeah, but you're doing it for a good cause. And I said, yeah, but it don't have to be we're not getting, I would like to see this it don't have to be, I'm just doing it to help people. It's not actually through our podcast, or I just want to help people. And I think it's a great thing to help those in need. I was just actually wanting to do it through the cold winter months, and somehow we're still chugging on. and that's fine. And I will do that as long as people bring it here. But I guess my point to all this is, if you guys want to just keep helping, drop that off at local food banks. Every one of them need it. Seems like through these tough times, everybody always needs help, and help those in need. You know, and if you don't have the money to help people, give people a kind word. Sometimes a kind word goes as far as anything. And you know, what's even more precious than your money is your time, because that's something that you can never get back. And people recognize that. Trust me, it means the world for you to share your time with someone.
No, absolutely, well said. And you remind me of the time. I mean, this is what I love about Freemasonry. I mean, one of the things that we did last year at Frank and Nicola 1170, and this is something you would not find me doing at all. This is not my thing, and I was never invited to something. It's something that I would probably pass because it's just not something that's the norm or I'm adjusted to or normal. But they were doing this ringing of the bells where they go to like a Kroger's or a Walmart or whatever, and we'll stand there and ring bells. And the whole point of ringing bells is asking for money that goes to I think it was for the Salvation Army or something like that. And I had a blast. I started singing Christmas carols, and I brought my boy, and we had fun. And the more I sang, the more tips we got, and more people came back. And then we ended up in 4 hours bringing $500, and they went to a good cause. And I think something that you touched on, Billy, and this is for our brethren around the world and those who are not Masons, listen in, is we sometimes think that there is this, you know, far end overreaching thing, and sometimes we think that's government, or we think that's a charity, or we think that there must be somebody else that's dealing with this and they're sorting it out. And a lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times we like to delegate our responsibilities to our communities and to our peoples with this mythological thing that we believe in, because you know we're inundated with news of this person's doing this or that person's doing that. But really, there are times where you are it, or we are it, especially as brothers and Freemasons, and as for non-Freemasons as well. You know, if you can give. You know, times are hard. Food prices are up. Just give you a few data points here. When in 2016, I could get a Big Mac meal burger for about $7 in my locality. That's now $12 back in Pierre, Illinois. And that, you know, I'm fortunate. I'm very blessed. You know, it's an extra few bucks. I do gripe at it because I'm an old Longbeard that likes to grumble when prices go up. But for those who are struggling day to day, week to week, trying to meet the ends meet, have to decide between eating food or heating the house, or putting their kids to school, or giving clothing their kids and feeding kids, and sacrificing their own subsistence of food and shelter or whatever. There are a lot of people who are struggling, and that increase, that 40 to 60% increase in just that staple. Now there's been a 40% to 60% increase in the United States in prices of goods since 2016. Okay, and it's a lot worse in the West and other places. In England, it's gone up. In Europe, it's gone up astronomically. So this is a global phenomenon. Okay, and so we can't, switch a button or turn a button on and just fix everything. So do what you can, whether it's being able to, drive and get some food cans and stuff like that, or whether it's creating a charity fund in your lodge, whether it's getting together collectively as a group, like what you just heard. People are coming now as a brother. This is a great thing about Freemasonry, Billy just wanted to, worshipful brother Billy just wanted to help. And then suddenly the brethren from all over just turned up at his door. And he's accumulated, if not tens of thousands of dollars worth of food that he's given to these food banks, which is amazing, which means leadership, leading. Sometimes we have to lead by example. And the more we take that step forward and remember that although we live in a world where you're on the touch of the button, someone can get you food and they'll knock on your door in 20 minutes. that kind of convenience is something that you should be blessed and thankful to have, but that's not how most of the world works, and there are other people who are impoverished and who are hurting, and we can't save the world, and we can't give more than we make, but anything that we can do, whether it's the food, whether it's clothing children who are in poverty, whatever you can do, whether it's setting up a fund in your local lodge or getting together to raise money or do a fundraiser, no matter how small, the amount is not what's important. It's the effort. It's the effort and the ability that you've done something, and the most important thing as well is doing it in a way where you're not burning the bank, where you're not blowing money, lodge money. You're not blowing lodge money. You're not blowing a hole in your pocket. You're doing it as a means where you can. So my rule is, my personal rule is 5 to 10%, if I can, on a daily basis. If I'm going out having a meal, I'm taking care of myself. I'm going to go get a couple of, drinks or cigars or whatever. I'm spending all this stuff on myself or on my miniatures that I love, my tabletop war games that I do. I've got some expensive hobbies. If I can spend a portion of that and hold that back and be able to go and be able to give that, like I do when I'm in my lodge, and I just come out and say, you know what, you guys are putting in here's $100, here's $50. I'm adding $50 to this. It's because I've saved. I've been a bit frugal. Sometimes I made a decision of not buying that. I said, you know what, do I need that? Do I want to go and spend several, or should I just finish the stuff that I already got done right now and just wait for a bit? Do I need to buy everything at once? So a bit of fragility in your household, keepings, in your way of life, in being a bit modest. And this is Templarism as well. The Knights Templar were very modest. They lived a life of poverty. Not saying that you should take a vow of poverty. Live a good life. Live well, eat well, be well, enjoy the abundance that you're creating, the lifestyle that you have, with all the great technology that we have around us. But at the same time, be mindful that we do have a responsibility, and the small acts of charity that we do, and remember I said faith, hope and charity, the small acts that we do have a ripple effect, and they do make the world better. And it's not about fixing the world with one fell swoop. It's putting small bricks and small layers. And what are your thoughts on that, Billy?
This, because I wouldn't, if I didn't believe it, and I wouldn't have done it. But what I was chuckling about is, don't think you have to drive to my house to be generous. Don't drive for 15 miles to come to my house to give me something. Just drive across the road and give it to the local church that's collecting, or, save yourself some money, or buy an extra can or something. You can go to the local, we have Aldi's around here, or there's a discount shop and save. There's all these discount stores. A lot of times they have canned food for $0.25. I guarantee you gas is a lot more expensive than that. You could buy an extra can cheaper than you can buy gas. And, don't spend an extra gallon of gas. Just buy an extra can of food and give it to them.
So what you're saying is that this initiative, this On the Level podcast drive that you've basically spearheaded and led, became way too successful and went way beyond your means. And aren't you glad you didn't announce this on air in December? Because with the thousands of listeners we've had, you may have been overwhelmed. And what Billy's saying is thank you so much for everything you sent me, but you do know you can do this yourself. And the idea was to lead.
The torch to the next guy.
There you go.
No, I don't mind. If you need to drop it off here, I will continue to carry it to the food drive, to the food pantry that is 15 miles away from me. But if you can drop it off next door, it doesn't have to be that certain food pantry. You can drop it off anywhere that collects food, and those people is hungry just like the one I'm taking it to.
Well, something interesting you said, and something beyond, just to give you guys a relevance of, we did a clean out last year of maybe 10, 15 years worth of clothes. I'm not the kind of person that buys clothes. Once I got my T-shirt, it's the same T-shirt I'm wearing for 10, 15 years until, I can't wear it anymore. And I've had clothes that I can't even wear anymore because when you come to America, you tend to eat well, and the portions tend to be really big. So you tend to grow not in height but in width, and so
Stature.
Your stature grows. You can become more of a dwarf warrior as opposed to a lean, mean fighting machine elf
Hobbit.
like an elf or a hobbit or whatever. So I've become more of a dwarf there. But you know what? I can't blame anyone else. The food is good. I do love steak, and I may have gone overboard on the steak and ribeyes over there in the US, and I may have gained a few more pounds than I should have. So long story short, I was a thin man. I used to say I was an elf, and then I became a fat dwarf. But my point being,
we still love you though. That's okay.
My point being though is that I must have had 30 big back bags of clothes. My wife, myself, and then a bit of my boys, and I put it all in the back of my van, my town and country Chrysler van that I love so much. I drove it to, I can't remember what the store was, but it was one of those stores where the people can come in and pick up clothes for free and take away with them to clothe the family. And they were shocked. They gave me a trolley, and there was about 8 runs of the trolley's worth of going back and forth. So I hope I made their day. And so there's a lot of stuff that we've got, guys. There's a lot of stuff that especially in America, I can say that. And also in England, there's a lot of stuff that we've collected over the years. Whether it's books that we no longer read or clothes that no longer fit us. And you just got to do a bit of a clean out. And what best to give those to organizations that can then give it out to those who need it the most and more than us, and actually, and especially if you're like me and ourselves, and you keep your clothes in really good condition, and they're literally, I guess, still secondhand, but they be knocked off as brand new, then those small acts go a long way. Instead of dumping it in the bin, which we could have done, we could have dumped all of that, and for the dumpsters to put it into the into the big massive gargantuan rubbish piles that they have, landmass piles of rubbish. People are using them, so there are loads of things you can do, but I think the important note is that I think we're trying to thank the many hundreds of you who have sent food, literally got to his door and give Billy the food, and Billy's then went on his truck and he's given the thousands and thousands of dollars worth of food. But go to the food bank yourselves. Go and do it, and we'll do these drives.
It's important to, if you're giving away your stuff, your clothes and stuff, make sure you're giving them away. Do a little research, because a lot of these people, you think that, I'm not going to name any names, but make sure you're giving them away to people that is actually giving them away. Because I found out, as you give away stuff, some of them's actually marking your stuff and selling them for a profit. They're not just giving them away like you think. Because I was a victim of that. I give away a bunch of stuff, and I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I give my stuff away, but I wanted to give them away to somebody that was going to get them for free. I give my stuff away because I thought someone can use these things, And I'm a large man myself, and I thought if nothing else, it could be a tent for a small family, and. And so, but no,
I think the moral is also. I think the important thing you're trying to say, and I think it's an important thing to caveat with everything we're saying, because faith, hope, and charity is all good, but be vigilant. Always be vigilant.
Yeah.
Be vigilant in what organization you give it to. Do your research. Sure. Do your fiduciary work, because you have a responsibility of making sure in the world that we live in, and it could be anywhere you are in the world, that the person you're giving the stuff to is acting in good faith. And what Billy's talking about is there is a climate wherever in the world where there are people who act in bad faith, and that trust, that honor that we Freemasons and others around the world abide to isn't unilateral and isn't universal. And so it's all good to give, but do your vigilance. Be picky. Make sure you choose, so you are sure that it's going to the right people who are doing this for the right reasons. So
absolutely,
that's again, it's the same thing. It's like if you have a lodge, don't go burn the bank account and then you guys got no money. Figure out a
Right.
way to grow that charity money. Don't get over obsessed about the amount. We got to stop
Bingo.
thinking short term and start being long term. What would it look like if we keep doing this in 5 or 10 years? Oh my God,
Mhm.
we'll raise, I don't know, $1,000 in 3 months. We'll raise $1,000 in 2 years. We'll raise $1,000 in 5 years. It doesn't matter. That $1,000 is still important, right? Doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there. It's you've got a goal, grind at it, work at it. Good
But
will
we're going to have
happen.
to pay our bills. We're going to have to pay our insurance. We're going to have to pay our taxes. We're going to have to pay our stuff.
Yes, yes. And the modicum that I would use, my brethren and brothers and sisters around the world, is the same in Freemasonry. God, family, business, then masonry. So put your family first. Make sure your family are all covered. Make sure they're all sorted first. And then make sure your business, whatever it you're doing, whatever work you do, basically, takes care of family. And then wherever else you can do that is not going to burden you or hurt you, that's when for me, that's the best time to give. And so do it in a responsible, vigilant way. So you can give for decades and not just, in the short term sprout and then shoot yourself in
And
the foot.
spread it out, the people that need it.
Yeah, it's everything I've learned, whether it's decisions you make in life, whether it's choices of where to do this or where to do that, everything is effort. And the more effort you put in, the more you get out. The more effort you focus on, what we're just talking about, the more you'll get out of it. The more you understand the process, the more you will be more confident. The more you can confidently tell other people to go to this particular organization or go to this friend of yours who is 100% reliable or whatever you're doing. And so effort, whether it's you're doing ritual, whether it's working with your brothers to run the lodge, whether it's to recruit good men, whether it's to give back to the community. One thing that I feel personally that the world is walking away from is effort into making things more point and click, more easy, more lazy, so other things do stuff for you. And everything that I apply with, even with all the new technology, it's effort, and that's how I'm able to stand out in my mediums, because I'm not just using something that's a point and click. There's a lot of hours and effort that goes into it, and so that's really it, really. And that's all I've got to say. What about you, Billy?
I like to end things by saying Godspeed. So thank you for listening. As always, everything you guys have done, you guys have been there for us. You've listened to us. You've obviously shared with your friends because we've continued to grow. And man, thank you. Thank you for being there for us.
Thank you for listening to On the Level Podcast, your Masonic podcast. When you are ready, duly and truly prepared, you can always knock on the door.